Good evening. Inspire Washington acknowledges that we and our partners statewide are on the homelands of Native peoples who have lived in this region from time immemorial. We pay respect to their elders past and present. We also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands where you are all joining us from today. Currently, there are 42 tribes, 35 of which are federally recognized, that share traditional homelands and waterways in what is now Washington State. Inspire Washington expresses its deepest respect for and gratitude towards these original and current caretakers of the region. As a cultural sector, we acknowledge our responsibility to establish and maintain relationships with these tribes and Native peoples in support of tribal sovereignty and the teaching of cultural traditions and heritage. I am Manny Kowalin, and I'm currently in Seattle within the land of the Duwamish tribe in the interconnected lands of the coastal Salish. I'm the Executive Director for Inspire Washington, and I invite you to join us today for the Seattle Cultural Candidate Forum. Although we are live streaming from Town Hall, which is mostly empty, I recognize the many people who are leaning into this conversation, and I envision them here in the audience. They are the hundreds of cultural organizations that provide science, heritage, and arts programs to neighborhoods all across Seattle. They are also the artists that count on this work, many of whom are unemployed today. They are also the young people, our students, populating every school who crave for cultural programming as yet another reason to help fuel their academic success. It is because of all of these and the communities that are counting on Seattle's cultural sector to recover that we are hosting this forum. This is our opportunity to select the champions for our industry as we move into recovery. So thank you for joining us, and we encourage all of you to come up with a voting plan and to select your champion in the upcoming November elections. To start off, I'm really thrilled to welcome to this stage our performers, Amanda Morgan, the founder of the Seattle Project and also a dancer at the Pacific Northwest Ballet, and Noah Martzel, also a dancer at the Pacific Northwest Ballet. We do have a few people in the audience, so let's give them a round of applause. cultural programming provides such vitality to Seattle neighborhoods and to our community. All across Washington State, we have programs in science, heritage, and the arts that provoke curiosity, inspire creativity, as well as spur critical thinking. As we move beyond the pandemic, we will need these programs here in Seattle and across all of Washington State. So to be more involved in advocacy, I ask you to join inspirationleague.org and sign up to be an advocate. And I also want to draw your attention to our next forum, which will be next week on the 12th for the King County races. To get started, I'm really thrilled to introduce our moderators. We are so lucky to have Marcie, Sillman, and Vivian Phillips moderating today's event and bringing all of their wealth of experience to this conversation. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you so very much. Can you all hear me? All right, thank you. And I just want to say on behalf of Marcie and myself, thank you to the Seattle arts community for continuing to invite us to manage these conversations, knowing that at the core of everything that we do is really to elevate the significance of arts and culture in our daily lives. So we're just really excited to be here. We moderated a forum similar to this back in the summer, but it was with all of the mayoral candidates, and it was a house full of people, just the candidates. And now, to this evening, we have an opportunity to talk to a few more individuals with different races so that we can learn what their vision is for Seattle's future for the school board, city council, and the mayor.
We're really excited to expand the reach to include these various races. And I know that there are so many issues in the city, but tonight, candidates and audience, we are most interested in finding out what you think about arts and culture, the role of the cultural sector in this city, and how you would advance the sector, which has been so hard hit during this pandemic. There are 1,000,001 questions that Vivian and I could be posing, and we've attempted to roll up some of what to us felt like the most pressing issues specific to each kind of race. And we also plan, if there's time, to ask some clarifying or follow-up questions. The time is very tight, so we're going to be squeezing things in.
So what we're doing this evening, as I've already said, is we are covering the Seattle School Board races, Seattle City Council race, 2 of them, and the Seattle mayoral race. So those are the 3 categories that we'll be working in. Each candidate for school board and city council will be posed a different question, and they will have an opportunity to respond in 1 minute. We are not going to spend a lot of time introducing folks. If you want to introduce yourself as a part of your 1-minute response, feel free to do that. We have a timekeeper, and we will let you know. Green means 30 seconds, yellow means 10 seconds, red means sit on down. Okay, here we go. So let's get after it.
We want to invite up to the stage the 2 candidates for Seattle School Board Director position number 4. On this side of the stage is Laura Marie Rivera, and on this side is Vivian Song Maritz. And thank you both for being here. And I think if you feel comfortable, you're allowed to take your masks off there. If you don't feel comfortable, feel free to keep them on. I'm gonna, I guess I'll start with you. And Vivian, I wanna make sure you can understand what I'm saying. One of the issues that artists cite, and for those also who want to teach art in the school system, is that there is a requirement right now for a full-blown accreditation as opposed to being a working artist. Can the school district provide greater flexibility when it comes to teaching artists to tap that interest?
Thank you for the question. Yes, I believe that we really need to, this is a time to be demonstrating flexibility. I think that arts education is paramount at this time. Students have spent more than 15 months away from each other, from their educators, and they really need an opportunity to process their trauma And I think it's really important to bring community members, people who are experienced with working with children, into our classrooms to help them with this experience. And as a school board director, I would be interested in looking at creative ways that we could expand these opportunities for our students. And certainly one way would be to look at what are the barriers to bringing these people into our school buildings. And if accreditation is one, that is definitely something that we should be discussed. I know for me personally, I had my first teacher of color as a sophomore in college. And I really believe that part of the issue of bringing more educators of color, bringing educators with different kinds of experiences, is this issue of accreditation. It's very expensive for educators to get accreditation.
Laura,
Thank you.
would you like to follow
Go
up?
ahead. No, I was just saying thank you.
Oh, that's good. Laura, I want to pose that same question to you. How would you, as a school board director, address that idea of accreditation that is currently required for arts teaching in the school system?
Thank you for that. My name is Laura Marie Rivera, and I am a mother, and I am an educator myself. I am a nonprofit professional, and I'm an artist as well. And through all of my schooling, all of my training in the ballet school and everywhere else, we find that there are different skills that you learn in a classroom learning how to teach. I have a master's in education, and I also have hours and hours and hours in the classroom at the ballet bar, like our people from today. And there are so many things that you learn by doing that you don't necessarily learn in the classroom, and vice versa. So we definitely need to be more flexible with who we are bringing into our classrooms and the skill sets that they bring. Just because someone has a 4-year degree does not mean that they are the best person to be teaching any given subject. And so we need to be looking at the bigger picture, so we make sure that we are providing the best opportunities for our students and their best shot at a brighter future.
So how do you do that? Is that a policy decision? I mean, both of you have said open it up. Is it? I guess I'll pose it to you first. Is it a change in policy at the board level?
It's not a change of policy at the board level. This is an issue that you would need to engage state legislatures around, and the Office of Superintendent and the Board of Education for Washington State.
So it needs to come from the state level, not.
Well, it's an accessibility issue, and we at the school board have things that we can do and things that we cannot do. We have things that we can talk about even before that we can do them. Seattle Public Schools has done a great job elevating the idea of equity and bringing that into their strategic plan, and I think the same goes toward human resources, and we're seeing it in nonprofits and companies throughout that are honoring professional experience over a university degree.
We do have a constituent here, Jillian Jorgensen.
And Jillian represents a book at Repertory Theater Education. She's the education director, and she is the Queen Anne Elementary Ptsa president.
Thank you. Those things are all true. I also want to make sure that my older daughter's school is mentioned as well. I'm also a PTO member and parent at Licton Springs K-8. How are you planning to ensure that all students in all grades at all schools have reliable access to engaging and culturally responsive arts instruction that meets the published mission and vision of the Visual and Performing Arts Department without relying on PTSA or PTSO funding?
Let's start with you, Laura Marie.
Well, thank you for that question, because I think that a child's education is so much more than what is happening in their school classroom. And when we look around our community here in Seattle, we have so many opportunities and so many organizations that are out there doing the work. And they are in the process of bringing these programs to the classroom. Pacific Northwest Ballet is bringing it to the classroom. The Chihuly Museum of Garden and Glass is bringing 8th graders to the museum. We need to build those partnerships and really work toward expanding them and making them even more inclusive. I know that, like you're mentioning, some schools, some classrooms have more access to these amazing programs, and we need to make sure that we have that access throughout the district, and so we can get all of our students to really see all of the amazing things that Seattle has to offer. We've been missing all of these things during the pandemic, and I think there's probably nobody here or at home that hasn't been reading, listening to music, binge watching shows, all of the above. The arts are so important to us.
I'm sorry, your time is up. It's your turn to answer that same question.
Yes, thank you for that question. We have a program called Creative Advantage. It was created in 2013 with a goal that by 2020 that we would have equitable access to art opportunities for our students in our Seattle public schools. We would make sure that there were pathways for our students who are interested in pursuing the creative industries as a career. And 2020 has passed, and I understand that this past year has been very challenging for our school, so we weren't given the full opportunity to fulfill our commitments. But I think this is an organization and an effort that is really underfunded. And I, as a community member, as a school board director, would use my position to make sure that we are leaning into our relationships with the Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, the Seattle Foundation, the over 100 community arts organizations that participate in this program, and make sure that they have the funding that they need to make sure that there's equitable access to arts for all of our students. I think this is a really challenging time for the arts community, but this is also an excellent opportunity.
And it's challenging in terms of time commitments. This is candidate Vivian Song-Maritz. This is Laura Marie Rivera. They are running for Seattle School Director position for, thank you so much. It goes fast, time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we're moving right on to Seattle Public School Board position number 5. And the two candidates are Dan Harder and Michelle Sarju.
A little bit of cleaning has to take place here.
Are we supposed to be looking at you,
You
or
can-
somewhere else?
Into the great beyond. Wherever you want.
Yeah, just look. Oh, there's a camera over there and a camera over there.
I don't want to look at the camera.
Okay, great. You can
But
look
we would
at us.
like you to speak into the microphone because we're recording this, so we want you to sound, both of you to sound good.
So super. Listen, Vivian gave it away a little bit because this question is essentially about the creative advantage. The question is, are public-private partnerships such as the creative advantage successful in your view? And how can we ensure all students have access to quality arts education in our entire public school system? I'm going to start with you, Michelle.
Well, thank you, Vivian.
Yes.
I am not exactly sure what you mean by public-private partnerships. Really quickly, Michelle Sarju, 34-year Central District resident, mom of 3 former Seattle Public School kids. But I can speak to this relationship of community-based organizations and our school district. When we think of arts organizations like Langston Hughes, right? They put on the summer musical. That has benefited this community for decades now. When I think about the organization Creative Justice, which is serving the most marginalized young people in our community, that is a partnership that we should be exploring. There are so many other community-based organizations that are doing arts for young people. If it's philanthropic organizations, yes, we should have a partnership with them too, because they have the funds to provide the resources that are necessary.
We're out of time.
I need to thank,
All right.
I guess I gotta be looking at him.
Right, exactly. Thank you, Michelle. Dan, do you want to address that question, please?
Absolutely. Dan Harder. I'm running for school board, and I'm a resident of Capitol Hill, and I'm an engineer. So I'm bringing the little bit of an engineering perspective to the school board, hopefully. All kinds of cultural and arts education is very important. Highly support all programs. As far as public-private partnerships, I think those are fantastic. I think that enables a wide variety of different activities and different influences to be seen. I think that's what arts provide. They provide different, an opportunity for students to see different perspectives and to learn through those different perspectives. And so I think it's a huge part of growth for students to experience that. And yeah, so I think it's wonderful, and I think we should continue those kinds of programs.
Okay, I'm gonna just pose the specific question to both of you again. And I think you can maybe give me a yes or a no and a little bit of expansion. We'll give them 30 seconds on this, okay? So the question is, are public-private partnerships such as the Creative Advantage successful So we're talking about existing public-private partnerships. Do you feel like they're successful?
Well, yes, I do. I mean, I think it takes multiple resource inputs to actually bring the arts to our students.
Okay.
And so the public schools do not adequately fund the arts. Actually, public schools are not adequately funded. So the resources do not get funneled to the arts. They mostly get funneled to STEM and other pieces of education.
Okay, great. Dan?
Well, and I could see the difficulty there, right? Because the reason you have a partnership is so that you can hopefully take advantage of some resources that aren't coming from the state. And so I think that is the advantage of having a public-private partnership, is hopefully you can take advantage of that, and it isn't all depending on one source of funding. So that's the advantage that I see of public-private partnerships, is the private organization can bring some of those resources in.
Okay, great, thank you. So we have a question from a constituent, Manuela Sly, who is the founder of Comita Play School and immediate past president of the Seattle Council of PTSAs. Manuela.
Thank you. I'm also a mother of 4 children, so thank you. That's my biggest job and accomplishment. Thank you for having me today. As you know, language and culture are closely interconnected. Seattle Public Schools offers dual language programs in a handful of schools across the city. Some of those schools are located in affluent neighborhoods where ELL and heritage speaker populations are slim. How would you ensure equitable access for all students across the city, specifically those that would benefit from dual language immersion, to close the opportunity gap? Would you support a citywide lottery and guaranteed transportation to those programs for all students who want to attend?
Go ahead, Michelle.
I absolutely would support that. We have to, if we're going to talk about equity, then we need to do equity. We need to be equity. It has always been the case that some of the most well-resourced programs are in places where marginalized students cannot access them. And so we can't offer these programs without offering transportation. And so I absolutely would support the option of having students be able to access these programs, but also getting safe, reliable transportation to and from the places where they live.
Great, thank you. Dan?
Yeah, I as well would support transportation and resources. I think your question points out an issue when you have specific schools designed to do specific things, as opposed to having those opportunities available across the district. I would prefer moving more towards a system where we have those opportunities at every school. You can't always do that. But I think that your question points out an issue with having a specific specialized school in one location, as opposed to having every school brought up to that same level.
Great, thank you. All right, well, I think that's it for Michelle and Dan. Thank you so very much. Both running for position number 5, Seattle Public Schools. Dan Harder, Michelle Sarju. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have the third and last director position that is on the ballot, position number 7. And I believe we only have one candidate here. Maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
This is Brandon Hersey. Brandon's opponent, Genesis Williamson, is apparently not attending. So, Brandon, thank you for showing up.
My absolute
Appreciate
pleasure.
it. We'll just jump right in. Many national studies cite the lack of transportation as a major impediment and barrier ensuring that all kids have access to great arts programming. Is there anything that our school district can do to provide for adequate transportation so access is assured?
Yeah, absolutely. And before I get into that, hi, I'm going to back up because I can be loud. My name is Brandon Hersey, like the candy bar without the second H, and I'm running for District 7 for the Seattle School Board. And there are a few things that we can do both in the district and in terms of advocacy. What we can do at the district is first take a look at our bus routes that exist right now and make sure that we are developing those through an equitable lens. Believe it or not, a lot of our bus routes have not been looked at for years. And when we're really taking a look at our strategic plan, which squarely focuses our need to center students as we've deemed furthest away from educational justice, Black and brown students, we really need to be looking at our routes given the fact that we are in an incredibly urban area to make sure that they prioritize those students. The second part is that we need to make sure that the career of being a bus driver is an attainable and accessible and sought after job. And that's going to take advocacy from the state to make sure that we increase that pay and up those benefits so that we can attract people to our district to drive our buses.
Okay. It's odd not having an opponent. I want to throw that creative advantage question to you since you get an extra minute. And not so much whether the public-private partnerships are advantageous, but whether there is if that is this creative advantage program, which is a partnership with the city of Seattle, the school district, and the Seattle Foundation, which is sort of a private entity, but a nonprofit. Is that the best way to ensure that all kids in this district have access to quality arts education?
Yeah, just like every actor approaches the role a little differently, I think that the solution there is also multifaceted. I believe that in the sense of, is that program specifically successful? I would say absolutely yes, and the model that it's set forth gives us a starting point to where we can expand. I believe if we are really celebrating all of the arts and cultures, especially in a region like Seattle, one of the key components there is figuring out how do we leverage not only our private, but also our public sector and other organizations as well. I believe that in a place like Seattle that has amenities such as the Seattle Arts Museum, such as MOPOP, such as the programs that we mentioned earlier, what's critical there is to ensure that that partnership is also two-way, that we are making sure that the access is very close to our students, especially those furthest from educational justice, but more importantly, that those partnerships are sustainable and are actually delivering on their aims.
Thank you. Jillian, you're here, you're up again. This is Jillian from
Thank you for your service to our children, Jillian.
Oh, you're so welcome. Hey, I have another question. Current arts education in elementary schools is reliant on enrollment numbers. All students have PE regardless of enrollment, but visual art and music teachers are assigned based on higher enrollment. Some schools may never reach those higher numbers. So, how will you ensure that students, regardless of their enrollment numbers, will get consistent, sustainable arts education?
Absolutely. That's going to take an updated funding model from the state of Washington, and by no means am I passing the buck here. There's definitely some things that we at the school district can do to ensure that those types of things happen. But if we're talking specifically about the enrollment piece, that is coming directly from the state. Now, let me fill you in on a little secret. Seattle Public Schools has been backfilling what the state has not provided in terms of nurses, counselors, and librarians as best we can for the past decade and a couple of decades before that as well. Our funding model is largely based on an outdated 1970s calculation of how many teachers are allocated per school, per enrollment. And so what we can do, aside from advocacy, is really lift up the role of an arts teacher. We've really seen a decline in many things across the spectrum of what we offer in our specific schools, and as a product of a really robust art program from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, it really in a lot of ways saved my life, and I really believe strongly that we need to make stronger and more robust investments in this sector, and that begins with hiring and sustaining quality educators.
Thank you. This is Brandon Hersey, who's running for school director position number 7.
Thank you.
With this opponent who's not here. Thank you so much.
The pleasure was all mine.
And our fast-paced forum continues as we move on to the first of 2 Seattle City Council races. Wow.
No, it is going so fast, I know. And I'm sitting here thinking, I bet there was a lot of preparation that everyone put into this for you all to get one question. I'm sorry. You just got to give that one question your very best.
That's right. So we're going to start. We have, for those of you who haven't thought about it, there are 2 at-large, 2 citywide council positions. The rest are district. We're only focusing on the citywide races today. The first race is for position number 8, and we'd like to welcome up our candidates, Teresa Mosqueda, who is an incumbent council member. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And Kenneth Wilson over there on the other side. So thank you both. And if you feel comfortable, you can remove your mask. We're happy to have you take it off here. Everything's sanitized.
Shall we tell them that we're asking them different questions?
Oh, we're asking you different questions. Thank you, because I see it in front of me, but you don't see that we're asking you different questions. So, Teresa, we're going to start with you as the incumbent, so you get to be first. We are going to ask this question of mayoral candidates, but we want to ask this of council members as well. What do you think is the relationship between the city council and the mayor's office, and how do you see a working partnership, if it is a working partnership, when it comes to governing the city? And part 3 of that question is, where does the cultural sector fit into that partnership?
Well, I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you for that question. Again, Teresa Mosqueda, Seattle City Council member in Position 8, hoping to earn the voter support again this fall. I am the budget chair as well, and in this role, we've worked with the mayor, we've worked with King County, we've worked with public health and our state legislative members to try to respond to this moment of crisis with urgency and through a lens of public health to identify how we can not only respond to COVID and the crisis it's created and worsened, but how we can create a more resilient local economy as we respond. And that requires us to invest in arts and culture. In terms of the relationship with the mayor and city council, I specifically did that when crafting the Seattle Rescue Plan. This was our city's chance to invest over $240 million going directly into our city from our congressional partners who fought hard for that funds. And with the mayor, we passed one tranche of funding, over $120 million. We're poised to pass another tranche, and we invested in that $25 million for cash assistance, specifically saying this needs to go to arts and culture, and another $3 million for recovery grants for arts businesses and organizations, because that is how we recover and bring people together.
Okay, so I just want to follow up a second. What is the ideal relationship between the council and the mayor when it comes to all of this?
Well, I see colleagues in the audience that both have worked in the mayor's office and also in council, and I think the respect for both the executive branch and the legislative branch is paramount. Recognizing that there is 2 branches of government and coming together in moments like this is important, but respecting the fact that council holds the purse and that we together, if we invest those funds appropriately, then have the opportunity to work with the mayor on implementation. The mayor's focus is largely on implementation. The council, as the legislative branch, is largely focused on budget and passing long-term legislative strategies. We all benefit when we work together. I know that that's what folks have seen from me on council, the ability to come together, find common ground, and build large coalitions, and that includes the mayor often.
Thanks, Teresa.
Super. I have to move my question to the side. Kenneth, there is also a question from a constituent, someone who could not be here this evening, and it is very related to the question I'm going to ask you. So I'm going to ask my question, and then maybe we can come back to that, but let's get at this primary question first. There's a rapid pace of population growth in our area. Everybody knows that. And there is rising income inequality throughout the region. Cost of living is squeezing artists out of the city, among other people as well. For many artists, however, their home is also their workspace. So what can the city do to provide for more artist housing or make it more affordable to live and work here in Seattle?
Thanks for that question. So I know a little bit of this personally. My daughter is cellist, my older daughter a violinist, my wife a pianist. So a lot of these lessons and important activities take place at people's homes. It's their business as well. And so the impact even to COVID was very challenging. We had cello lessons on the porch. How do you deal with that when someone comes to your house? So there are lots of issues about having your business in your home. And so what we can do is try and help them out in terms of regulation, find ways that they can utilize their space differently. That could even be building permits. How do you build a space? In this kind of a challenging situation, you might want a space where you can have an extra room for your students and build your business, or at least maintain it. We saw how COVID changed the function of a lot of things around our city. Some businesses actually failed. There's only one dry cleaner in my neighborhood now. But there was actually restaurants were being bolstered by this challenge because everyone's eating out as best they could. So any way that we can help our our artists is very valuable. Permits, regulation, all these are good things.
All right, great, thank you. So the question from the constituent, because, and this will go to both of you, is the housing affordability crisis has affected our arts and culture community dramatically and disproportionately. Many in our community have been displaced, and the only housing solutions that have come forth are for people who qualify for low-income housing. What are your strategies to serve our populations that don't qualify for low-income housing, but also can't afford market rate rental prices?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple, I'm going to grab this mic and
Sure.
move it a little bit. I'm a little taller. So there are a couple of things that I guess I'm not moving it. So I'd like to talk about, because we always think about Seattle as the garage band town. This town is so amazing for all the music that we've developed, everything from jazz and coming forward to our more modern things. So the thing that you'll notice that was actually a common denominator was this is in houses and neighborhoods. Right now we're pushing out those neighborhoods by changing the zoning and damaging those rental properties that maybe to you look like, oh, we could put a more modern piece of structure right here. But in fact, that is our way of allowing artists and others within the community to share with their roommates and make it affordable by having houses. So tearing down old houses, forcing regulations that we do through the rental properties, the things are extensive. You have to be regulated so that they'll inspect it. You'll have to have additional items. Those challenges get passed to the renters, or that property owner will give up and sell their property. Now becomes 3 homes that no one can afford. So we have to do something about the regulation.
Thank you. All right, Teresa?
Thank you for the question. I have done something. I've spent the last 4 years on council tripling the investments that are going into housing. That includes affordable housing at 30% area median income and below. It also includes, quote, workforce housing, 30 to 60% of the area median income, so that artists and activists, students and teachers, nurses and construction workers have a place to call home in Seattle. Not only that, we've coupled regulations with increasing housing with the ability to have studio spaces in the front so that there's live and work spaces that are being sold and rented together. And I emphasize sold as well, because it's not just about the ability to rent additional housing, which I focused on, but selling additional homes, especially to first-time home buyers, folks who've been largely pushed out of the market and priced out of the market due to past exclusionary zoning legislation, past zoning policies that have precluded many of our communities of color from living in this city. I want our policies to root out those exclusionary practices and center us with affordable housing and rental units, which include artists.
Thank you. And the reason that we're going to rush you and to end these questions, because we're going to pose one more question before we let you all go. And this is a question that everybody is going to get, right? Okay, all right, great.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can I get to read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
The mayor just appointed a new interim director for the Office of Arts and Culture. What will you do if reelected as part of the confirmation process when the mayor has made such nominations going forward?
Thank you for this question. So I want to first thank the co-chairs of the Arts and Culture Commission. I've spent a lot of time on the phone with them and over Zooms over the last 3 to 4 weeks talking about how the Arts Commission was left out of the process, and there was a lot of frustration and concern about that. Ultimately, folks recognize that there is a new mayor coming in. The biggest request that I heard in speaking with the Arts Commissioners, this is prior to their resignation, was saying, we understand that this will potentially go forward. Our biggest ask of you is to make sure that there's investments in this budget and that the council work with the mayor and include the Arts Commission in the final selection. I'm committed not only to making sure that the next mayor include the Arts Commissioners and a community process in the next selection for the permanent director, and that could be the interim director right now, but I want them to be at the table. And second, that I'll be there as a champion with them, with all of our community, as we invest priority dollars in this budget towards the renaissance that recovery should be. And then again, we get to build off of the investments we've made this year already and center arts and culture in this year's budget.
Thank you. Kenneth, go ahead.
Could you ask there was some detail, sorry.
Yeah. I will ask it again. The sitting mayor, the current mayor, just appointed a new interim director for the Office of Arts and Culture. And as Councilmember Mosqueda said, the Arts Commission was not included in that process. What would you do as part of the confirmation process when the incoming mayor makes such a nomination?
So first and foremost is arts and culture are so fundamental to our life. We saw the great impact that we lost with what happened in COVID, so many things shut down. So having this important position is valuable to our community and something that we need to build upon. So I would take that very seriously. I think there are things, I know we had questions even about what's your qualifications for a position to teach in school. I think some of these jobs have a background to them, but an educator, even having some of your background in arts and doing these things firsthand. So being a performer and how we're going to select this and criteria that we would add to our thing is really valuable to me.
Great, thank you. Thank you both.
I will note I got 3 questions and she got 4, but I appreciate it. I'm Kenneth Wilson, and I'm running for your
counting?
Yeah.
This is Kenneth Wilson. This is Teresa Mosqueda. They're running for City Council position number 8. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Now, we didn't do a little more cleaning before we bring up the candidates for position number 9. Correct? Number
Yes.
9? Number
Yes.
9? Number 9?
Number 9.
Number 9. Now I could say I'm a boomer and I'll just give Beatle references. This, again, is another at-large position. It's the second citywide position, and it is an open position.
And are we ready?
I think
All right, super.
Come on down.
So the candidates are Sara Nelson and Nikkita Oliver. Welcome them, please.
Thank you so much. This is Sara, that's Nikkita. Nikkita, we're going to start with you, if that's all right. Some people argue that the arts are not the priority that they once were at Seattle City Hall. In the past, Seattle made arts and culture a major priority. We did big things in the city. We did a lot of infrastructure, building Benaroya Hall on top of the underground light rail station. We adopted a citywide Percent for Arts program, one of the first municipalities in the country to do so. And we even embedded artists in seemingly unrelated departments like Seattle Public Utilities. Do you think our city can still do these sorts of great things for arts, or are halcyon days behind us?
They are not beyond us, and I love that Councilmember Mosqueda said a renaissance. I do think coming out of the pandemic, we have an immense opportunity to develop more infrastructure and support specifically for our arts and culture workers. I myself am an arts and culture worker, have worked as a contractor, and have also served as Executive Director of Creative Justice. And I have plans, first around building affordable housing, specifically for our artists and cultural workers, knowing how important it is to be able to live directly in the city that you're serving. I think that we need to be putting in place a freelancers, artist, and art and cultural worker Bill of Rights, acknowledging that I think arts and cultural workers are some of the most exploited, overused, and yet highly valued. Even we started tonight with having a dance performance. So ensuring that our city has guidelines and regulations around expectation for our contractors and freelancers around payment, the type of pay they should get, and benefits is really important for us to begin to dive into. And then having an incubation model and a basic income pilot.
I'm sorry.
No worries. I have a lot of plans.
I know. All right, so Sara, given the collapse of the admissions tax revenue during the pandemic, will you support replenishing that loss to ensure ongoing and stable funding at the Office of Arts and Culture and the related programs?
Thank you for that question. First, let me just say hello to the audience. I'm Sara Nelson, running for position 9, and I am a proud member of Inspire Washington and the Inspiration League. Yes, is my short answer. I will commit to that. I understand that the admissions tax before pandemic used to provide $12 to $14 million, and now it's down to a trickle. And there are ARPA funds, yes, but only $3 million was allocated for arts, for the Office of Arts and Culture this year from that fund. And so I will commit to allocating more federal funds that we get. But here's the thing. House Bill 1058 narrowly failed last year. That would have provided King County with the council mandate power to fund the arts organizations that we're talking about. I will advocate as council member that that is included in our legislative agenda, and that will create an ongoing permanent stream as well.
All right, great, thank you. So I think we're gonna ask you the same question that we asked the last two candidates before we go to the constituent question. So I get a chance to say it this time.
Oh, you read it this time.
The mayor just appointed a new director of the Office of Arts and Culture. What will you do as a part of the confirmation process when the mayor has made nominations such as
The community has a say in who is director of that particular office. And it's very clear that our Arts Commission did not get to play the role that they're supposed to as the community representatives to the city, articulating what our policies and hopefully even our director of that office, who they are and what they represent. And that's not to say the current director is wrong or not the right person, but process exists to ensure that we have input. And I think that as a council member, when you are asked to confirm a person in a position, understanding where the community is at and whether or not a process was followed that allows for the necessary input happened, should direct whether or not we actually follow through on that confirmation in order to make sure that the public and in particular arts and culture workers have trust and belief that that office will serve their needs and their interest.
Super, thank you. Sarah.
We ask people to serve on our commissions for a reason, and it's incumbent upon us to take advantage of the time and expertise that they provide voluntarily and listen to their recommendations. I agree with Nikkita on that front. I think it's good to start earlier, though, before the nomination, and to meet with executive staff to talk about what are our values that we're trying to advance in the Office of Arts and Culture, and what qualifications do we want to see in that director, and make sure that we can come to an agreement of what areas of focus do we want. And let's be honest, I mean, the arts and culture and heritage programming that we have in Seattle is a tool for social change, it's a tool for economic development, so let's make sure that we're nominating and confirming someone who is committed to those goals.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to our constituent question, and that is coming to us from Rose Cano from Harborview Medical Center. She is a cultural mediator, and we also know her as a theater director. Welcome, Rose.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My question. Pioneer Square houses many of the shelters and mental health services for homeless and destitute populations, immigrant and non-immigrant. The encampments and the lack of middle-class employees returning to the square have made it very difficult for local businesses to open and attract customers and patrons. This historical district on Duwamish and Suquamish land is also the heart of Native American culture, the original Gallery Walk, and a performing arts hub that has suffered greatly and not bounced back. What is your plan, specifically beyond the grants through the Office of Arts and Culture and the Office of Economic Development, specifically for Pioneer Square and downtown, to deal with encampment residents and to revitalize this area and keep it a hub for theater, music, performance, and visual arts as it once was? How will you link public health, housing, and cultural sectors relief and recovery? After all, art health is fundamental to mental health and public health.
Great, thank you, Rose. Let's start with you, Sarah.
Well, I would say, thank you for that question, that we should do what Ese Teatro is doing. What your theater does is bring the arts to people in shelter and to people who have no access whatsoever to the arts. And so when we're talking about Pioneer Square, I think enlivening a public space and bringing the arts into the physical space so that everybody can participate in the arts. But clearly we've got to have a plan for homelessness, and we have failed up to this point. And this is a huge topic of conversation, but we have got to make sure that we are responding to the needs of people living in encampments and in the surrounding areas. And I'm looking forward to being a partner with the Regional Homelessness Authority to put in place a model that will reduce our numbers of homeless people and get people into the housing that they need and the mental health and addiction treatment that they need.
Super great, thank you. Nikkita.
So I work for an organization that is a restorative justice, healing, engaged space through art for young people. And I believe that art has the power to heal. I think it is significant to mention that many of our Native relatives are disproportionately impacted by housing instability and homelessness, many of whom may choose to be in areas like Pioneer Square because Chief Seattle Club is there. We've also concentrated our resources in 3 areas, Pioneer Square, downtown, and in Little Saigon, which means a lot of our houseless residents seeking support are all going to congregate in the same spaces. So I recommend a multifaceted strategy, building housing, acquiring housing, and having mitigative approaches now, putting navigation centers throughout the city so that we do not concentrate poverty or need in particular areas, and then ensuring that rather than sweeping people, we provide accessibility because it is a challenge to find folks to get them housed once we sweep them. And so if peer navigators are to get them housed, they need to know where to find them, what resources are available, and to do that in a way that honors their self-determination.
Perfect. Thank you, Nikkita Oliver and Sara Nelson. Position number 9, Seattle City Council at large. Thank you both. You know, the thing I like most about this evening is that we have questions from constituents tonight. So
as opposed to
we're
just
hearing
us.
we're hearing their voices.
We have lots
as
of
well.
questions, so it is time for a brief cleaning, a little disinfectant happening here, and then we're moving on to the mayoral race. And we have lots of questions for our 2 candidates. Luckily, there's only one mayor's race. I think my head would explode if we had more than that.
Well, right. Our head exploded already back in July.
Yeah, we did. We'd like to welcome the candidates. That one's Bruce Harrell. He's here right away. Lorena González is here as well. Thank you so much.
Hello, Lorena. Welcome.
Welcome to both your city mayor candidates. And these questions, unlike the questions we've been asking in the past rounds, are for both of you. And I guess I will start, Lorena, with you, because you, like Teresa Mosqueda, are a sitting member of government at this moment in time. King County set aside nearly $30 million from its federal ARPA funds to support arts, culture, and science organizations to help them recover from the pandemic. The state of Washington is in the process of granting more than $30 million, and there are other kinds of assistance programs, such as the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, which is so much easier to say as the acronym SVOG. The city of Seattle, by comparison, provided $3 million from the first round of federal funding, and I believe 1.5 is in the proposed 2022 budget. What do you think that this says about how Seattle prioritizes arts in the city? And if you're elected as mayor, what will you do to direct public and support for an investment in the arts and culture sector?
Well, thanks for that question. My name is Lorena González. I am proud to be a candidate to be Seattle's next mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to answer this question. You know, I think there's always more investments that we can make, certainly in our arts community. This last go round around ARPA dollars, there was a lot of competing needs, including making sure there are small businesses and the people most negatively impacted by COVID had an opportunity to get those direct cash assistance payments. We needed to invest in early learning. We needed to make sure that we were prioritizing the needs of those who were unhoused. And as a result of that, we were able to make a lot of different distributions through those ARPA dollars, and came to an agreement with our arts commissioners around an early $3 million investment as a result of the hard work that we did to come up with a negotiation to figure out how to invest in all these priorities. I think honestly, it is important for us to continue to invest in the arts and culture community. We should do that in connectivity and in a manner that complements the many investments that we're also seeing from the state and the county. The needs in this area are great, everything from housing affordability issues related to arts and cultural workers to making sure that we have more affordable cultural space, and to also making sure that we continue to have the vibrant street level use that is necessary in order to continue to promote arts and culture within our community. So I'm committed to continuing to find ways to make sure that Seattle is investing what we need to invest in order to make sure that we have a robust arts and cultural community in the city of Seattle.
Thank you. I forgot to remind you before I asked that question that you guys actually have 2 minutes to answer these questions, so you can go into soliloquy. Bruce, do you need me to repeat that question, or are you good with it?
I got the gist of it.
Okay, good.
So I think, again, it sort of demonstrates the city's opportunity to invest heavily in the arts. And I'm sort of defining arts sort of broadly to talk about literature, theater, music venues, museums, displays of arts, education in and out of the school building. Washington State ranks 45th in terms of how it invests in the arts community, yet we rank second in absenteeism. Arts is a hook. Arts is something that binds us together, it is a unifying element. I think everyone in here would testify how some form of art or music or poem has affected your life. So we have to demonstrate that not only is this a good thing to do to inspire us, but it's an economic generator when you look at who and what we're investing in. So our strategy will be investing in 3 things: investing in the artists, investing in cultural communities, and investing in cultural space. And yes, this is a letter penned by Dr. Morris, one of the former arts commissioners, to talk about our investment strategy. I think the county has shown us what can be done with the $30 million of funds that they invested. So under my leadership, you will see us using this not only as a good thing to do as an economic generator, but remember, our city will be defined by how we treat our artists, how we communicate to one another. I like to think that there's art in almost everything that we do. So you'll see us using this as a strategic tool to unify our city, unify our cultures, unify our languages, an expression of love in this city, which we so desperately need. So you'll see our investment strategy will follow that lead.
Perfect. All right, another question for both of you. Our arts and culture and science organizations are in need of major capital support, in part due to aging, also in part due to a need to address climate conditions in a post-pandemic world. The city does not have a dedicated capital program at this time to help support these needs for facilities. Would you support such a program? We'll start with you, Bruce.
Actually, I sort of answered that in my first answer, and the short answer is yes, but I'm not going to give you a short answer. I'm going to hum a few bars. That when we invest in not only our artists, we have to look at space. When I retired from the city council, that's exactly what I did. I became the chairman of the board of one cultural space in Columbia City, and we also manage a place called the Royal Room, where we have free space many times for artists to display their talent. We have what's called an open mic night, where we have artists and poets and people display their talents. And so you'll see us not only investing in people, but investing in spaces. We have to realize that during this pandemic, 62% of our artists were unemployed, and they need a place to perform. So you'll see us investing in structures as well as people. 95% of artists had income loss during the pandemic. So this is a demographic that is clearly very important to our city, but they need spaces. So you'll see not only through our admissions tax and strategies, an actual investment through all of these wealthy corporations around us as well. We use our existing tax streams to make sure we build into brick and mortar institutions and open space such that people could show their talent.
I'm going to ask a little follow-up to that. You know, one of the things that happens in the arts and cultural community as it relates to organizations is when they go out to raise funds, a lot of funding does not apply for capital needs. So would you directly support a capital funding program for arts?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, you got me on record, Vivian. Yes. Okay, I can't ad lib on those, so yes. And you know I raise money well, so yes.
Okay.
Same question.
Go ahead.
You.
Great. I do think, excuse me, I do think that capital funding for new structures and preserving our existing arts and cultural spaces is really important. I think, you know, we're in Town Hall Seattle right now. It is an example of how we can come together at all regions and all levels of government to support lifting up together with the base of existing donors that you all have to continue to preserve these really precious buildings that are losing a lot of ground in the city of Seattle. So absolutely would go and take very seriously the need to look at dedicated revenue streams to support additional capital support for arts and cultural spaces. I would also layer that with a very strong racial equity lens to make sure that our stories of BIPOC and Indigenous folks in the community are being told and represented in those new capital investments. And I would also want to make sure that we can build a broad arts community through this capital gains program that expands on what we see represented in the 12th Avenue Arts. How do we incorporate housing for the artists who are going to be using that space? How do we incorporate affordable commercial space for incubation of the future artists and leaders within our community? So yes, it's about theaters, it's about a space to practice your craft and to bring all of us together to tell our stories, but to me it would also be important to integrate all of the other things that make those public spaces so beautiful, which is a place for people not just to convene, but to potentially live and to also work. And I think that those are things that we can look at funding creatively to be able to support and to scale up across the city.
Thank you.
Do you want me to ask this bonus question, or should we just move along?
Oh gosh, this bonus question, it just keeps popping up.
This bonus question keeps popping up. I'm going to ask it. So we had this pandemic, you remember that, and right now the majority of the arts and culture funding in the city comes from an admissions tax. Well, if there was no admissions, there was no tax. I know that the council voted to change the way that money's allocated going forward in the 2022 budget so that it's based on estimated admissions tax. We're still in the middle of a pandemic, so we don't know what the admissions are going to be or how much tax is going to be collected. So, Lorena González, given that, how would you support replenishing the loss to this fund to arts and culture, the stable source of funding?
Yeah, and you know, I think I heard one of the candidates before us talking about how the admissions tax has historically been not the most stable source of revenue. Look, we continue to have one of the nation's most regressive tax systems, and that is unfortunate, and it also plays out in a lot of different arenas, whether it's on affordable housing, whether it's on how we fund enforcement of labor standards, and it is also true in the area of how we are able to sustain funding that is available to support our arts and cultural community. So I'm a big proponent of progressive revenue. We, excuse me, I am not sick, I swear. You know, there is, you know, through my co-sponsorship of Jumpstart Seattle payroll tax, I think we will have future opportunities to look at other priorities that we could fund through that really important progressive revenue tax source that is going to be much more reliable and provide a much more sustainable source of ongoing revenue because it is a progressive revenue source. It focuses and targets those corporations that are the largest and most profitable in our city to fund critical services across our city. And so it'll be important for us to continue to monitor that program and to identify, as we meet the other critical needs around housing affordability and homelessness services and small business supports, in this period of renaissance, how we can shift those priorities to be a potential source here.
You disappoint me only a second, because I thought for a minute you were talking about leading the charge for an income tax in Washington State, but
well,
yeah,
I've been doing that for a while. If I was only governor.
Yeah, exactly. Bruce Harrell, same question.
So I would agree with Ms. González that yes, we all know we have one of the most regressive tax systems here. I agree with Dr. Morris when he wrote a letter to the mayor looking for the backfill of the admissions tax, knowing its volatility and unpredictability. What I'm very proud of is if you look at our state legislature who governs many of these issues, they were able to tackle some of the most aggressive climate change laws, the cap and trade law, the HEAL Act, the ban on plastics. You look what they did with police reforms. The members of the Black Caucus who played a key role in this legislation have endorsed my candidacy because the regressive nature of this tax system will be next. But in the meantime, we will backfill and look at the admissions tax as a tool we have now to make sure that our artists and our cultural institutions and our cultural places and people are taken care of. We have some answers in front of us in terms of affordable housing, and I know we won't have to get into all of that. The investments up on 12th Avenue as an example to make sure that people can live in this city. So yes, I support every available tax revenue, and I would also say that, again, looking at our large wealthy corporations, align ourselves with their corporate social responsibility. They have an obligation to preserve the arts. When you destroy brick and mortar institutions and small businesses, you have an obligation to preserve that which is beautiful. Our arts community is that definition of beauty in our city. We have to preserve it. We will be known more by our arts than our arguments and our debates.
Thank you so much. I'm going to add just a quick yes-no question here, which is really pretty easy. Would you support an admissions tax on men's sports?
Yes.
Could you clarify? Oh, yes. Yes.
All right, you all heard it here. Yes, because
Yes
for
and
whatever
yes.
reason, men's sports is exempt from this particular revenue stream.
You know why.
I would like to.
Well, I don't want.
I would like to add for the record.
Wait, hold on. Let me.
I'd like to add for the record. The council can do that now if we're so gung ho about that. By the way.
Okay.
All right, super.
Well, so,
We'll move on.
we will move on to
That
the
could
next.
have been done last year.
This is a question.
Could have been done in the last 12 years.
We asked this question of council members, and we'll ask it of you as well. Bruce Harrell, the sitting mayor, just appointed a new interim director for the Office of Arts and Culture. If you're elected mayor, will you appoint a new director to this office? And regardless of whether you do or not, what steps would you take to solicit input?
Sure. First of all, let me be very clear and transparent. I've heard the question to other candidates for other offices. We're talking about Ms. Royal Alley Barnes, who's placed as the interim director. This woman should be honored for the work that she's done in the arts community, in the African American community, in all communities. She spent a lifetime preserving this industry, working feverishly, and you will not hear me denigrate her or anything that she's done. I would be proud to work alongside of her in any capacity on any day. Now, yes, the Arts Commission, which is comprised of 16 members, 7 appointed by the mayor, 7 appointed by the city council, and 1 at large, a Get Engaged member, their voice needs to be heard. So I will meet with all of them. There are other leaders in the industries as well that we'll talk to. My demonstration of outreach on every issue, whether it's public safety, homelessness, education, will bar none be outstanding, a standard of excellence in outreach. So yes, the Seattle Arts Commission will be consulted. They won't be the only ones consulted. And again, I do want to finish that question by saying that it should not have had to take leaders in the African American community and others to stand up for Ms. Barnes. She deserves better than that. We are better than that.
Before
I feel like
follow
every
up,
time I finish, I should
We'll
drop
come
a
back
mic
to
or
the
something.
follow-up, I think. Go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah.
Let's allow.
Lorena González?
Yeah.
Sure. I think I think the question is really about sort of how the next mayor is going to show up and lead in areas that people have differing perspectives. And I think it's important for the next mayor of this city to do everything that she can to bring people together. And part of that is pulling together a process that feels equitable, that feels accessible, and that doesn't feel performative. And I think we have moved away from that. And so I think it's really important that when we agree, when the next mayor makes agreements with certain community members about what they can expect her to do, you have to follow through on that commitment. And unfortunately, that didn't occur in this particular circumstance. And there was an opportunity to try to create some healing, to try to create some agreement on the next steps to take. Part of that agreement included the interim appointment of Ms. Alley Barnes, and I'm glad that we were able to move that forward while also providing space for those who had concerns to express those concerns when they were not provided the early opportunity to do that. And I think that really is important in the context of interim appointments in particular. The council doesn't approve interim appointments. It is within the discretion of the mayor, and the next mayor can play an important role in making sure to diffuse and have a win-win for everyone by, on the front end, making sure that she is prioritizing that outreach and that any sort of issues are being worked out before those announcements are made public.
Thank you so much. So I want to follow up because this question also came up from a constituent who couldn't be here this evening. The question is not about who got appointed. The question is about the process. So the question that the follow-up here will be, how will you incorporate the community search committee that was already appointed for the selection process? How will you incorporate that committee in the selection for the next arts director? Bruce.
Well, by doing that, by incorporating them, by reaching out, by making sure we have a record of their opinions, by making sure the members of the Arts Commission, as an example, are included, all 16 of them, to make sure that our other commissions who are vested in the arts as well, not just the Arts Commission. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the art commissioners. I mean, many of them are experts in their field. So we'll make sure the outreach is done, and quite frankly, in 12 years of appointing department heads and police chiefs and community police commissioners, I've demonstrated a clear history of outreach. The fact of the matter is I'm from the community. I go to coffee shops. I go to Ptsa meetings, and so part of my job has been, for not just the 12 years I was in office, but for the 30 or 40 years I've been involved in local politics. So we do this because it's meaningful work. And so yes, we will make sure that we have meetings, we use Zoom, we use Google Meets. I've learned all these cool tools now, and hopefully the old-fashioned in caucus and have discussions. That's a unifying element. That is not a divisive process. And again, when you say it was not who, it was the process, okay, I guess so. But in this one, I think it might have been who as well, but I'll accept that. I'll receive that, as they say. I'll receive it with the process. That's what I'm asked to do.
Okay, thanks. Lorena?
You know, I think the next mayor has a real opportunity to leverage both the history and the subject matter expertise of the current interim arts director, along with what the search committee really wants to see in the permanent arts director. And I do think that the how really does matter. And I know that based on my office's current conversations with members on that search committee, with the co-chairs of the Arts Commission, and with members at large in the community, in the broader arts and cultural community. For the arts and cultural community who has historically been left out of decision-making and left out of rooms of power, it is critically important that the city reincorporate those leaders and that broader arts and cultural community in those very powerful decision-making strategies, because here's the reality. The arts community was the first to get shut down in COVID, and they are going to be the last to actually see recovery. So it is incumbent upon us, if we are serious about actually restoring the arts and cultural community and making sure that art and the culture and their workers still have a place here, then we have to be serious about consulting with and allowing ourselves as leaders to be open to their advice and to their counsel about the very future of their livelihood and existence in this city.
Thank you. Super. I'm gonna go ahead to this. All right,
do that.
super.
You do that.
So you both have served on the Seattle City Council. Bruce, you served as interim mayor. I forget for how long. I know it was a short time, but it was that span of time when we had like 13 mayors in 2 weeks, something like that.
Keep the zingers coming there, Vivian. I appreciate it.
How could I not. So what is the working relationship between the council and the mayor, if you all wouldn't mind expanding on that, given your experience as a council member? And how do you see the partnership working collaboratively in support of the arts, if you are elected? Lorena?
So I've been on council for 6 years, and I have served with 4 mayors, and that's a lot of mayors to cycle through in a short 6-year career on the city council. I think that the relationship between the executive, who is the mayor, and our legislative body, which is the city council, is critically important to the future of our city. That's why I'm really proud to be endorsed by 5 of the existing city council members. And the reason that I believe they have endorsed me in this particular campaign is because they know that they have a partner in me. They know that in order for us to get beyond the political gridlock that has been a chokehold on our city government, it is incumbent to have somebody in the mayor's office who is willing to listen, who's willing to compromise, who's willing to negotiate, but also someone who is willing to lead on a progressive, bold vision for the city of Seattle that will not pit the mayor against the city council and their interests, but instead chart a path towards a shared vision, one in which we all win, because we are working towards the common goal of ending homelessness, of creating greater housing affordability, and of making sure that each district has what they need based on the deep engagement that each one of the district representatives currently has within those communities. And that's the kind of mayor I hope to be, and that's the kind of partner I hope to be to the council, so that we can all thrive together as a city.
Thank you. Bruce, it's getting closer to the end. You're almost almost done. I won't be zinging you too much longer. Go ahead.
So, when I was president of the council, on both times I was elected president, I would defend the council, and I would say things like, I will defend the IQ of this council and the commitment to communities to any council in the country. And that's the mayor I like to be, that yes, I may disagree with my colleagues or even some decisions they're making now, but if you looked at how even during the primary of 15 candidates running, you never saw me once denigrate any of those candidates. That's just not in my DNA. My wife of 30 years is here watching, so I always try to perform well in front of her, but she would suggest that as long as she's known me and since college, that my style of leadership is truly to just try to pull out the best in people. You could disagree with me all day long, but that's what the mayor has to do. Langston Hughes has a quote that I would like to share with you, and I shared it at the first forum. There were just a lot more people there. I said, perhaps the mission of an artist is to interpret beauty to people, the beauty within themselves. And so when I look at the arts community, the importance of the arts community is how we communicate with one another. Right on this stage, I was responsible for bringing Angela Davis, one of my personal heroes, right on this stage for Black History Month. And since I've left, we haven't had those kinds of events for Black History Month. Representation matters. So my relationship with the council will be to find what we have in common, to help them champion their causes, and to lead. And to lead. It's as simple as that. That I believe they're trying to solve the same problems. They just may have different approaches. So you won't hear me denigrate their integrity or their intentions. We just may have different strategies. It's as simple as that. That's the kind of mayor I think we need. This is game changer stuff I'm trying to do for this city, and my heart's in it, and I trust that you believe that. I was born and raised here, and I see the stuff people write about me, and while it's hurtful, it bounces off, because I have people who love me and believe in me that's known me my entire life. That's the mayor I'll be.
Thank you, Bruce.
We have one last question. We have many questions, but we're going to end on this one because our time is short. And I'll start with the same question for both of you. I'll start with you. What do you see as the biggest threat to Seattle's arts and cultural community's long-term survival?
Oh, wow. I think affordability is huge. And, as we continue to feel the pressures as a city of growth and density, you know, the crunch really begins not just for our cultural spaces and the affordability and maintenance of our cultural spaces, but it also challenges us to identify how to expand our cultural spaces when those cultural spaces are fighting for the same space and to exist within the same footprint as other high priority needs, including housing, affordable housing in particular. And so I think the same is true for the workforce and artists, folks who are part of our arts and cultural community. Is, you know, what I hear is the struggle of knowing whether or not they're going to continue to be able to have a home here in the city of Seattle. And so I really have a vision of where we can pair those two realities and come up with the solutions necessary to address both the need to preserve and expand our cultural spaces, but also integrate workforce housing, artist housing into many of those new cultural spaces to allow for both to coexist within our city. In order to do that, we are going to have to expand the footprint in which our cultural institutions and affordable housing can and must exist in order to maintain this really important part of who we are as the city of Seattle and as Seattleites within the heart of our city.
Bruce, what do you see the biggest threat to be?
I think the biggest threat to our arts community is fear. And if we have fear, then it affects our public safety strategies, our investment strategy, our educational opportunities, our investment in people, investment in opportunities. And so I think that as we look at these very trying times coming out of COVID, coming out of a business revitalization effort, doing all we have to do, that it may not get the priority because we don't realize its importance, that we make fear-based decisions, not logical decisions. This is an economic driver. It's the preservation of our culture. That's why I talk about an effective public safety strategy, removing bias, removing racism, and making sure all communities feel safe. You create better, in my opinion, when you are in a position of feeling safe. That's when the creative juices start to flow. I didn't talk much about my musical background because it's not very strong, but I can read music at least. But we have to feel safe. Our investment in our housing becomes critically important. That's why I said earlier, the 12th Avenue apartments where we have 88 affordable housing at 60% of AMI, these are the kind of investments to keep our artists and our musicians, our literacy experts. These are the investments we have to invest in. We can't be afraid of this because this is, as they say, invest in guns and not butter. And we don't mean that literally. We're talking about investing in things that will help us perpetuate the best in ourselves. An example would be, I attended a reading by Malcolm Gladwell, and I just read everything I get my hands on. He's one of the best authors that I know. I was talking with strangers here in Seattle, and I looked around the audience, and it was not very diverse at all. And my wife and I attended that, and I thought, how do I bring this treasure to the whole diverse part of Seattle? That's the kind of investment strategy we're going to have under the Harrell administration. And we will not be fear-based. We'll be joy-based because we're going to make sure the creative juices in our industry are flowing.
Super. Thank you so much. Thank you both so very much for your time, for coming out again. You know, Marcie and I do this little podcast. Have you heard about it? This little thing called Double Exposure. And who knows, we might want to dig a little bit deeper with both of you in that forum. Would you be up for that? Silence.
I like it.
Crickets.
You're going to get it on the record here. Come on our show. You don't have to wait that long because next week, next Friday, we'll be using parts of this forum as a part of our podcast. We really want to thank both of you for joining us and for your time today.
All the candidates.
Thank
you all so very much.
Yeah, we do. We also want to thank Inspire Washington Arts Fund, Christopher Shanin, and Seattle Theater Group, and also Town Hall for being the beautiful space that it is.
And I just want to make one note. We ended right on time. It is 8:30. Thank you so much.
Bravo, bravo.